Jungkook destroys a rude reporter live on TV, but Suga and Kim Taehyung's tearful words afterward left the entire studio in silence. Did your global success make you forget where you actually came from, Jungkook? Or did you just finally stop pretending to be humble? The question didn't land. It detonated. The red-on-air light pulsed above Studio B like a wound. For half a second, the entire live broadcast floor of music and talk live ceased to breathe. The floor manager froze mid-cue, his hand suspended in the air. A camera operator flinched. In the front row, where a sea of purple light sticks had been swaying, 100 hands went still. Jungkook didn't blink at first. He sat center stage under the brutal white key light, dressed in a simple black shirt, his tattoos hidden, his hair falling just over his eyes. He had been smiling 30 seconds ago. That smile was gone, not replaced by anger, by something much heavier, much quieter. He leaned forward, just an inch, toward the reporter in the second row who had stood up without being called. The reporter was Mark Ellison, from a tabloid outlet notorious for this exact thing. A man in his 40s who had built a career on viral cruelty. He held his press badge like a weapon and repeated himself into the microphone, louder this time, feeding off the silence. It's a fair question. You've gone from a small-town kid to a billionaire brand. A lot of people think the sincerity is an act now. What do you say to them? The host, a veteran woman named Ji-hai, tried to intervene, her voice thin. Mr. Ellison, we ask that questions remain respectful. Jungkook raised a hand, gently, not to silence her, but to tell her it was okay. He looked directly at the lens of camera 2, the live feed camera, as if he knew exactly which light was blinking. Millions were watching at home. Then he looked back at Ellison. His voice, when it came, was not loud. It was low, steady, and it carried the weight of a person who had spent half his life being translated incorrectly. Where I came from, Jungkook said, his English clear and deliberate, is not a small town. It is my mother's kitchen where she taught me to sing while washing dishes. It is the practice room with no heating where I bled through my socks when I was 15 because I couldn't get the choreography right. It is 7 boys who shared one bathroom and one dream. So no, I didn't forget where I came from. I carry it with me every day, so people like you cannot rewrite it for me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The air in the studio changed temperature. Ellison scoffed, trying to regain ground. That's a very rehearsed answer. It's not rehearsed. Jungkook cut in, and this time his Korean came through, soft but sharp, with the translator's voice overlapping a second later. What is rehearsed is your question. You came here tonight hoping I would be rude back, that I would give you a headline. BTS Jungkook snaps. I'm not going to give you that, but I will give you the truth. Humility is not pretending you are small. Humility is remembering who lifted you when you were. He paused and looked to the wings of the stage, just off camera, where 2 figures stood in the shadows. And I remember. Behind the main stage, just beyond the black curtains, Min Yoongi, known as Suga, felt his chest tighten. He wasn't supposed to be there. Neither was Kim Taehyung. The original plan was for Jungkook to do this press appearance solo. It was a light promotional spot for his new documentary. Suga had come because Jungkook had texted him that morning. Hyung, my stomach hurts. Just that. And Suga, who had known Jungkook since he was a 13-year-old kid who fell asleep in the studio, had canceled his studio session. Taehyung had come because Taehyung always knew. He always knew when one of them needed a shadow to stand in. Yoongi's hands were in his pockets. He was wearing a black beanie, his silver hair hidden. His jaw was clenched so tight it ached. His fear wasn't for Jungkook. It was for the boy he had met all those years ago, the boy who had cried silently in the practice room because he thought his Busan accent made him sound stupid on camera. That boy had grown into a man who could silence a room without shouting. And that made Yoongi feel both impossibly proud and impossibly sad, because he knew how much it had cost to learn that kind of calm. Taehyung, beside him, was not calm at all. His eyes were already wet. Taehyung felt everything in his body first. His hands trembled. He had a habit when he was nervous, a small, almost invisible habit of rubbing his thumb against the ring on his middle finger. He was doing it now, over and over. His secret, the one he never told interviews, was that he still kept the first letter Jungkook ever wrote to him, folded in his wallet. It was in messy, teenage handwriting. Taehyung Hyung, thank you for teaching me how to be not shy. He was terrified that the world would harden Jungkook, that the kindness would be mistaken for weakness until the kindness disappeared. On stage, Ellison sat down, his face red, muttering something about no disrespect intended. The host quickly threw to commercial, but it was too late. The clip was already everywhere. The live chat was exploding. The control room was chaos. And Jungkook remained seated, his hands now folded tightly in his lap, his knuckles white. He had won the moment, but winning felt like holding his breath underwater. He was shaking, just slightly. Only someone who knew him would notice. From the wings, Suga stepped out. Episode 2. Suga did not ask for permission. He walked onto the live set while the commercial break countdown was at 40 seconds. The floor manager's eyes went wide and he waved frantically, but Suga ignored him. He wasn't an idol in that moment. He was a hyum. He wore a plain black sweater, no makeup, his face bare and tired. He walked straight to Jungkook's chair and knelt down, so he was eye level, not above him. The cameras, though on commercial, were still rolling for the live online feed that international fans watched. A production assistant would later say she forgot to cut the stream because her hands were shaking. Yoongi placed a hand on Jungkook's knee. His voice was low, only for him, but the lapel mic Jungkook wore caught every syllable. "You did good," Yoongi whispered in Korean. "You breathe now. You breathe." Jungkook's carefully held composure cracked. His bottom lip trembled once. "I thought I was going to throw up, Hyung." "I know," Suga said. And he smiled, that rare, gummy smile he reserved for only a few people in the world. "Do you remember when you were 15 and you forgot the lyrics in Japan and you cried in the van for 2 hours? Jungkook let out a wet, choked laugh. "Why are you bringing that up now?" "Because after you cried, you went back on stage the next night and you sang it perfectly, without looking at the floor once. You've always been like that. You feel everything first, then you stand up anyway. That's not forgetting where you came from. That's exactly where you came from." Behind them, Taehyung finally moved. He had been standing frozen in the wings, his own tears now freely falling, not caring who saw. He walked onto the stage, not with Suga's quiet steadiness, but with open emotion. He didn't kneel. He just pulled Jungkook up from the chair and hugged him, hard, burying his face in his shoulder. The studio, which had been a low hum of whispers during the break, went completely silent again. Different silence this time. Not tense. Reverent. Taehyung pulled back just enough to look at Jungkook, his hands on his shoulders. His voice was wrecked, thick with tears, and he didn't bother with English. "Jungkook, he said, his words tumbling out. "When you came to Seoul, you were this tall." He held his hand at his chest, and a few people in the audience laughed through tears. "And you couldn't even order food by yourself because you were too shy. And now you stand in front of millions, and you protect us. You protect where we came from when they try to make it sound small. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how proud I am?" He turned to the audience, to the cameras, his face streaked. He wasn't performing. He was confessing. "People think we made him," Taehyung said, his voice breaking. "They are wrong. He made us softer. He made us remember how to be younger. For 10 years, I watched this kid practice until his feet bled and then asked if he could do one more take. He never forgot anything. He remembers the name of every staff member from our first year. He remembers the ramen we ate when we had no money. So when someone asks if he forgot, it hurts here." He hit his chest. Suga stood up then too. He looked at the reporter, who was still sitting in the second row, now wishing he could disappear into his chair. Suga didn't look angry. He looked tired of a very old story. "I debuted when I was 20, Suga said, speaking slowly, to the room, to the live feed, to the millions watching online. "I was told I would never make it because I was too small, too pale, too underground." Jungkook debuted when he was 15. He was told he was too young, too innocent. He had to grow up on camera while people commented on his growth. Do you know what that does to a person? We tried to protect him. We tried to be the walls around him. But at some point, he became the wall for us. He looked at Jungkook, his eyes glistening. "So don't ask him if he forgot where he came from. Ask us, because we are where he came from, and we have never been prouder to say that we are his." The commercial break was over. The on-air light turned red again. The host was crying, openly now, not bothering to hide it. The audience was crying. In the control room, the director, a man who had worked in television for 30 years, took off his headset and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. The online live chat was no longer typing insults or jokes. It was just purple hearts, thousands per second, flooding the screen until it was a solid violet river. Jungkook, Suga, and Taehyung stood in the middle of the stage, arms around each other. They had forgotten the cameras. For them, it was just the three of them, in a practice room with no heating again. The broadcast should have ended there. The smart thing would have been to cut to music, to end on the emotional high. But Ji-Hai, the host, who was a mother herself, did something unscripted. She walked over and handed her own microphone to Jungkook. "Would you like to say anything else?" she asked gently. Jungkook took the mic. His hands were still shaking, but less. He looked out at the audience. He saw a girl in the third row holding a sign that said, "We remember with you," in shaky Korean. He saw a man in his 50s, probably brought by his daughter, who was now openly weeping and not ashamed. He saw the purple lights. He took a deep breath, and when he spoke, it was not as the global pop star. It was as John Jungkook. "When I was trainee, I had a habit," he began, his voice hoarse. "Every night, before sleep, I would write down one thing I was grateful for that day. Because I was so scared. I was 13. I left my family. I thought if I didn't write it, I would forget, and then I would become a bad person." He gave a small, self-conscious laugh. Some days, the list was stupid. The rice today was delicious. Yoongi Hyung bought me banana milk. Taehyung Hyung waited for me, so I wouldn't walk alone. But I still have those notebooks. All of them. In my apartment. He looked at Suga and Taehyung. I didn't shut down the reporter because I was angry. I was scared. Scared that if I stay quiet, people will believe that story about me. That I changed. That success made me cold. I am scared every day that I am not good enough to carry what Army gave us. That is my fear. My secret is that I still feel 15 sometimes. That I still need to hear that I did good. He turned back to the audience, tears finally spilling over. But his smile was pure and too loose, sincere and warm. So thank you. To Suga Hyung, who taught me that music can be a diary. To Taehyung Hyung, who taught me that it's okay to cry on stage. And to you, for remembering me when I forget how to remember myself. I'm sorry for crying on live TV. At that, the audience didn't just cry. They stood. Every single person stood and applauded. Not the polite applause of a TV show, but the roaring, aching applause of people who felt seen. Taehyung pulled him into another hug, laughing through his own tears. Suga, who never cried on camera, let 2 tears fall openly, and he didn't wipe them away. He let them be seen. In the second row, Mark Ellison quietly packed his bag and left through the side exit, unnoticed by anyone except the camera that captured him for a brief, lonely second before panning back to the 3 friends. Episode 4. An hour later, the studio was empty. The lights had been dimmed. The audience had gone. The confetti swept. The cameras powered down. The broadcast had ended up being the most watched live segment in the network's history. Outside, on the street, fans had gathered despite the rain, holding umbrellas and singing softly. Inside, in the cold, quiet hallway that led to the exit, 3 figures walked side by side toward the double doors that led outside. The doors were glass, and the late afternoon sun, which had finally broken through the clouds after a stormy morning, was pouring in, turning the wet floor into a mirror of gold. Jungkook was on the left, in a sleeveless black shirt now, his colorful tattoos visible, his real self. Suga was in the middle, in his black suit, his purple hair catching the light. Taehyung was on the right, his scarf patterned with small lemons, a gift from Jungkook years ago. They weren't talking. They didn't need to. Suga had his arms around both of them. Taehyung was leaning his head slightly toward the middle. Jungkook looked at Taehyung, then at Suga, and smiled. Not the idle smile. The warm, tired, brotherly smile of someone who had survived a storm and found that his people were still there, walking beside him. The sun hit their backs as they pushed the doors open. The sound of the rain-washed city and the faint singing of the fans outside came in. They didn't walk out as superstars leaving a stage. They walked out as friends leaving a hard day at work, together, supporting each other, bathed in light that felt like forgiveness. The friendship, after all the noise, was the only headline that mattered.